Okay, what are you saying, people, and welcome back to my channel. Now today on the weekly forex analysis for you guys. So on the screen are the pairs we'll be looking at today, but make sure you stay to the end of the video, so I'll be going into detail about every single pair, recapping what's happened during this week and also what could be happening during next week. So make sure you stay to the end of the video for all of that. But like I said, weekly forecast coming up now. First up, we've got EURUSD. Okay, so for EURUSD this week, we saw a bit of retracement to the downside. I'm expecting to see a bit of a deeper pullback for EURUSD since we've been on this really nice bull run to the upside. Expecting to see a little bit more of a deeper retracement. We got to around the 1.2 mark, expecting to see around 1.19500, potentially 1.19. However, as you can see, we had that continuation. Then obviously NFP came in on Friday and we really saw price take off to the upside. So we're looking very, very bullish now for EURUSD. I do believe now that EURUSD is very much on its course back to these highs at around 1.23500 and potentially even 1.24 and 1.25 after that if you do create new highs, which is more than likely for EURUSD now, looking at the higher time frame for the monthly and the weekly. So with that in mind, I do believe that with any movement that we see to the downside, as long as it stays that corrective nature, we pull back to key areas. I do think any movement we see to the downside is just another opportunity to look for those longs to capture nice continuation to the upside, because the trend very much in the higher time frames for EURUSD is to the upside. So when we do see these pullbacks on the 4H, the hourly 30 minutes, it's just giving us more of an opportunity to look for those longs. So right now on the daily time frame, I'm coming into this key area of resistance. You can see resistance there, support, resistance, big wick there acting as resistance as well. We're closing right around that area. And I do believe that will be acting as resistance coming into next week. We're a little bit overextended to the upside here with that news coming in, obviously for that big push. So I'm expecting to see some sort of pullback coming into next week. Again, it'll be nice to pull back to around this area here in the market. I'll just highlight that area quickly. You can see acting as resistance, resistance, support, support, resistance, resistance. So it has a lot of tests and it is showing that it has nice strength behind it. So if you were to pull back to that area, that'd be a really nice area to look to go long, back into this level and expecting a breakout to the upside. Again, it might not fall all the way back down to that area, so we might see a level before that. We do have kind of a slightly weaker level, but still a level to keep your eyes on around this area here. You can see resistance there, support there, will be acting as support there again. So we got kind of two levels to keep our eyes on for EURUSD. I'm expecting a pullback because it is coming to that daily area of resistance. You can see this resistance gave us this big push to the downside, so we could see a bit more of a bearish reaction. And again, I think it's only just another opportunity to look for those longs to the upside, and obviously a break of that resistance will act as support. So if you do have a breakout next week, look for those retest and that to continue back to highs around 1.23500 and potentially higher than that. So bias is very much to the upside for next week for EURUSD. Looking for those pullbacks, got two areas of value there looking to buy it at, and just riding those pullbacks to the upside. Unless we start taking out key levels, then we might turn bearish again. But looking at the high time frames, looking at the price action we're getting now, our bias is very much to the upside for EURUSD. So any pullbacks we get, we're just looking to add our buys on and see a nice swing to the upside for this pair. Next, we're going to take a look at USDJPY. Okay, so for USDJPY this week, we didn't see too much movement until, again, NFP came in on Friday. We had kind of a little bit of a continuation, but overall price was just consolidating around this area. And obviously NFP came in and we saw that big push to the downside. So right now we are trading around this key level in the market here of support, resistance. As you can see here, support there, resistance, support, now acting as support. It did look like we came to that daily key level that I was talking about last week and the week before that, this resistance here, which we did see a bit of a false break of not too long ago. As you can see, big spike up, big spike back down. As you can see, nice area of resistance, did tap into it again, and now it's having a nice reaction. So I do believe that USDJPY is back on its way to the downside. Again, we're still quite overextended here. We do need to retrace these areas. So my bias is to the downside for USDJPY. Again, not the best place to look to short the pair because we're coming into that support there in the market. So if you do see a bit of retrace to the upside, which I do expect to see a little bit of a reaction from that level to around this area here in the market, which we did see a nice push to the downside from. If you do come back and test that area, that will be a nice place to look for shorts, expecting to see a break of this level and back to these lows all the way down there, just maintain that bearish structure of price. If we do see a break of that support, again, you can look for the retest if you do hold underneath, and to continue to the downside there anyway. So two different kind of opportunities, but right now, again, USDJPY focusing on their shorts, expecting to see that continuation. Pull back to this area will be really nice, but if you do see a breakout and the bearishness just continue into next week, that bearish momentum continues into next week, and we see a break, you can wait for those retests, because again, has acted as resistance quite nicely before. So if it does repeat itself again, could be looking for the shorts back into that area, and if you do reach that area, the likelihood is that we're going to create new lows after that as well. So bias is very much to the downside, waiting for those pullbacks or the breakout, and look to trade to the downside for next week for USDJPY. And next we've got USDCAD. Sorry to interrupt the video, guys, but if you are enjoying the content and you find it useful, make sure you go hit the subscribe button down below, and also make sure you drop a like as well. It really does help the channel out. But anyway, back to the video. Okay, so now on to USDCAD. So for USDCAD this week, you can see we're very bearish this week. I was expecting to see a little bit more retracement to the upside. However, we did not get that. We got a bit of a consolidation around this area. You can see we tried to break to the upside a couple times. So 1 wick, 2 wicks there. Failed to break to the upside, and then we got the slow movement to the downside, and we saw the break and really saw the momentum come to the downside there. So we didn't really see much retracement, just a bit of consolidation and a continuation to the downside there. Overall price is still looking very bearish here, pretty much in all time frames, all the way up to the monthly, but down to even the hourly 30 minutes, even lower than that probably. We are still very, very bearish here. I do believe we're going to see a continuation of that again coming into next week. We're coming back into these weekly lows all the way down here, which we last were trading at back in September 2017. So as you can see, this was our last kind of major low before we started this big move to the upside. I do believe that is where USDCAD is going. You can see we're almost there already, and I think we'll probably take out that low as well and probably see price move into these areas here in the market. So again, bias is very much to the downside, and again, I do believe we're just going to see a continuation again the following week. So really next week, only looking for those sells. I do think we're going to see a bit of a pullback coming into this week, since we're quite overextended here. And if you do tap back into this area here, can be looking for those sells, aiming for that low there around 1.20500. And if you do see price take that out, I think the next target will be 1.2. So all of this consolidation here in the market will be acting as a nice area of resistance, where we did see a lot of bearish momentum come to. So if we do tap back into that next week, again, looking for those sells back into 1.2, then potentially even further than that. So bias is very much to the downside. Any movement we see to the upside is probably just a pullback. So looking for those shorts, and if you do see that bearish price action come in, look to capitalize on that, aiming back for these lows here around 1.2500, and if you break through that, just 1.2 on the dot. Up next is EURGBP. Okay, so now over to EURGBP. So for EURGBP this week, we saw a nice consolidation breakout to the downside. As you can see, we had this consolidation, which I was talking about last week, saying that we potentially could break to the upside or to the downside. And if you do break to the downside, look to target this area here in the market, because I do think we'll have a bounce and a push back to the upside, because I still do think EURGBP is slowly working its way to the upside. And we did see a move back down to the area slightly below it, traded, consolidated a little bit on the lower time frames just underneath that level. And then we saw a big push to the upside after that for EURGBP. So EURGBP, I still think, is on its way to the upside. You can see, looking at the daily, we had this big impulsive push, bit of retrace, higher low, another push, retrace, higher low. So I think EURGBP is slowly working its way to break this resistance here in the market, which is the weekly resistance. So I do take this across. You can see it was acting as really strong support here in the market and a big push to the upside. So it does have a lot of weight behind it, and again, it's taking its time to break through this level. I still do think we will break through this level of resistance and see a push into this area here in the market, which is where I'm expecting EURGBP to go in the next coming week or so. So we've seen this big push to the upside. We're back above this kind of key area of support in the market, which held the consolidation, which had the retest. So I think as long as we stay above this area, I think it's a nice area to look for buys with stop losses below that area, looking to target a break of that resistance and then push back into that area up there, which is around 0.87800, that area, give or take. But we do have this trend line, so if you do dip below that support, you could potentially be coming back to test this trend line here for a third test, which again will be a nice place to look for buys, targeting back these highs again, or if you're looking for the bigger move in the market, potentially this area all the way up there. So I think EURGBP, I'm only looking for buys next week, not looking to short the pair. We're creating these higher lows, so it is telling me that price wants to push higher. So again, looking for that retrace and looking to capitalize on that area, on that move to the upside, sorry. And we've got two possible areas that price could go and test next week. Again, that trend line there for a third test, just playing with those higher lows formation there, or if you do stay above that support, can look for buys there in the market if you see more rejection. Again, first target's got to be that resistance because it still could reject against us, but if you do see a breakout, can look to hold on to that trade or wait to trade the breakout if you trade the breakout, and then look to target this region up there. So a lot of upside potential for EURGBP for next week. Only looking for those buys around that trend line area or that support there for next week. Okay, so up next we've got AUDUSD. Okay, so now on to AUDUSD. So for this week, I was favoring moves to the downside, testing this key area here around 0.76500, key area of support and resistance. We did come close to testing that area. As you can see, we did roll over, almost test that area. We found support and then pushed up on, and obviously NFP did help this on its way to the upside. But right now for next week, we are looking very bullish here. It looks like we've just got quite a strong close above this area of resistance here in the market. So a very key area that I've been telling you guys that if we do break this area from a daily point of view, we do have a good possibility of pushing back to these highs around 0.8 and potentially even higher than that, which I am favoring AUDUSD to do, maybe not next week, but in the coming weeks, to push back to these highs now. Again, it could potentially be a false breakout. It's not the strongest close. We could easily creep back in. But I do think for next week, from a probably 4-hourly daily point of view, if we do see rejection of this area here, definitely could be looking for some buys and look to capture on that push to the upside. Because I do think for AUDUSD, we're slowly working our way back to these highs up there. So any move we see to the downside is probably just a pullback in order for us to get in some nice buys to carry this to the upside. Again, I look to swing my trade, so I'll probably look to find a nice area where I can get involved and probably look to hold back to these highs. But if you look to day trade, then probably just wait for those pullbacks on the lower time frames and capitalize on this trend to the upside, because I think we just had this push to the upside, a bit of a build up here, a bit of accumulation, and we're really going to see this this pair really burst to the upside back to those highs at around 0.8. so only looking for buys next week for AUDUSD. Again, if this area does hold, a great place to look for some buys, anticipating a continuation to the upside. Or if we do pull back a little bit deeper, again, still looking for those buys, anticipating another break of that resistance and price coming back to that 0.8 area there in the market, or even higher than that, giving us some new highs. So bias is very much to the upside for AUDUSD, looking for those buys around the 0.78 mark, seeing if we can carry that much higher. Now let's take a look at NZDCAD. Okay, so for NZDCAD this week, we didn't really see too much happen in terms of direction this week. We did really see the bearish momentum come into this pair last week with this big dive to the downside. I was expecting to see a continuation this week. However, we just got kind of a build up. As you can see, price is struggling to break through that resistance there and struggling to break through that support. So the market is in a range here. It is consolidating, getting ready for a move to the upside or to the downside. Because of this big bearish move that we had there, I am favoring price to break to the downside, but again, anything can happen when we're trading in this sort of way. So if you do break to the upside, could look to scale to the lower time frame and possibly anticipate a move back into around 0.89, which is this resistance here in the market. As you can see, we really did see price shoot to the downside from that area, so a really strong area of supply. So if you do break to the upside, probably looking to target that area there, and if you break to the downside, we'll probably see a continuation of this bearish trend in the market and see price come right back down to these lows all the way down there and potentially even lower at that point. So kind of got two areas to target, either 0.89, which is that area of supply up there, or back down to these lows. And if we do that, we're probably going to see price go a lot lower than that, because I was favoring to see NZDCAD go a lot lower last week. So bias right now is just indecisive, waiting to see what NZDCAD wants to do, and then we react on that. If you do look to trade within the range, you can look to sell from this area, buy from that area. If you just want to trade the range, that is very much possible. But if you want to trade that breakout and see which way price could push on for, again, you've got that option to the upside there to around 0.89, or back down to these lows and potentially hold a little bit further, because if we do that, there's good possibility we'll probably break through those lows and see price give us some new lows after that. So just going to see what happens next week, staying on your toes and ready to see what NZDCAD wants to do from there on. Next up, we've got GBPNZD. Okay, so now we're going to analyze GBPNZD. So for GBPNZD this week, we did see not too much movement. We did see a nice spike to the upside and price came right back down. So a big push in that respect, but overall we're kind of back at that same area. Last week, we had this consolidation here between that resistance and that support here in the market. I said if we break to the upside, we're probably going to tap back into this area here. And if we break to the downside, probably see some new lows around 1.9. So we did do that last week. We broke to the upside, retested and saw that continuation. But as you can see where we are last week, we're trading this area and we're back there again this week. So I do think the market is slowly trying to break through this support. As you can see, overall structure of GBPNZD, we are making those lower highs in the market, and this high is again lower than that high. So I do expect to see 1.92 broken, which is this support, and a push back into 1.9, which is this area of support here in the market. As you can see, really nice push to the upside. So I'm favoring a push into this area here, which does line up quite nicely with 1.9 there. So expecting to see a push to the downside for next week for GBPNZD and a break of that support. Obviously, you don't really want to be looking to short the pair as it is now, because we do have that support there. So actually could see a push to the upside before that move back down. So I will be looking for a little bit of a pullback for GBPNZD. Again, we do have this area of resistance here in the market, which was acting as resistance here as well, which kind of kept us in that consolidation. So if you do see a bit of a pullback back into this area around 1.93, good place to look for some shorts, with again stop loss just above that area, looking to target these lows down here. Or you can wait for the breakout if that's what you want to trade, retest, and the continuation to the downside back to 1.9. But my bias is firmly to the downside unless we take out 1.93, and if you do that, there's probably going to see a move back into that resistance up there. So bias is the downside for GBPNZD for next week, expecting to see a little bit of a pullback to 1.93 and then the continuation. Or if you do see the breakout coming Monday, you can wait for the retest of that 1.92 area and then see the continuation back down to 1.9. Next, we're going to move on to CADJPY. Okay, so now we've got CADJPY. So for CADJPY, you can see this pair is still very, very bullish here. Last week, expecting to see a bit of retrace and then the continuation to the upside after that. However, as you can see, the retracement was quite small, expecting to go a little bit further and then see the continuation. However, CADJPY was just far too bullish and we saw the continuation to the upside anyway. So CADJPY is still very bullish here in the 4H. Daily as well, still very bullish. Weekly, very bullish as well. I'm expecting to see CADJPY in the next coming weeks or so push into this area here in the market, which was kind of the top of this kind of range here for CADJPY in the weekly, which is around 91,600, 91,500. So we still got some mileage to the upside for this bullish trend. I do think we're going to hit that area in the next coming weeks or so. So for CADJPY, biases to the upside for next week. Again, expecting to see a little bit more retracement here since the market is a little bit extended. Then any move we see to the downside, I do think is just another excuse, another opportunity to look to buy this pair. So for next week, I think we could reach maybe around 9,500, maybe even 91, depending how bullish CADJPY is. But again, CADJPY is very much to the upside. We do have previous resistance turn support. So if you do come and test that area again, show that we're holding, could be a nice area to look for buys and capitalize on another push to the upside, expecting those highs to be taken out here and then push maybe to 9,500 or maybe even 91, again depending how bullish this pair is. But biases to the upside, and I think we still do have some mileage left to around 9,600, 91,500 also to the upside. Up next is GBPUSD. Okay, so for GBPUSD this week, we saw push to the upside. Price held this key support in the market, which I actually was expecting to break last week. However, on Monday, we kind of just held that support and shot to the upside for Monday, consolidated for most of the week, and then NFP kind of helped us continue our move to the upside. So GBPUSD is looking bullish again. I do think if we do break through 1.4, we have a good possibility of pushing to this area here around 1.42, maybe even higher highs around 1.43. So my bias is to the upside for GBPUSD for next week. Again, not the best idea looking to long the pair at this area 1.4 key resistance. You can see if I scroll across, we've been rejecting this area. We've been rejecting this area many times here in the market. So again, not the best place to look to buy the market. And we are a little bit overextended. So again, looking for that retrace. Be nice to push around halfway between that support and that resistance of the range. So around this area here in the market. We have resistance, 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 numerous wicks around that area. So we do pull back to that area. That would be a really nice area to look for the longs if we do have that bullish price action. Again, targeting 1.4. And if you want to hold your trade a little bit further, I think we can get a break of that 1.4. And next target will probably be with that 1.41 area. So bias is to the upside for GBPUSD. Again, expecting to see a bit more of a retrace to the downside to start the week off. You can see we're getting some wicks in that area as expected. It is a strong area of resistance. Nice pullback, and then possibilities to capitalize on that long to the upside, targeting 1.4 again, or potentially higher highs than that. There is a possibility again that we could just take off to the upside as the week starts. Again, if you do see price rejecting this area, again, it's a great place to look to go long and capitalize on another move to the upside as well. So kind of two possibilities there. I want to see a bit of retrace for the GBPUSD, but again, if it doesn't happen, can look to trade the breakout. But if it does, great place to look to go long around that area, halfway between that support and that resistance, kind of the midway point, and look to capitalize on the move back to 1.4. Or if you want to hold your trade longer, potentially could see us back to 1.41 there as well. So bias is the upside for GBPUSD for next week. Potentially could see a break of 1.4 as well. And next, we're going to see what's happening with GBPCAD. Okay, so for GBPCAD this week, we saw price kind of push to the downside. I did say last week, expecting more downside continuation. So wait for those pullbacks and look to capitalize on the continuation to the downside. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened for GBPCAD. We were looking very bearish here last week, expecting that momentum to roll over into this week. And we did get that push to the downside. And now we're tapping back into this key level of support. So I just take this across. You can see we just about tapped into it and had a bit of a bullish reaction from there as expected. So I do think we'll probably see price maybe have another push to the upside, then roll back over to come back and test this area again, have a deeper test, because again, the momentum is still very much to the downside. And jumping on the 4H, you can see prices have this impulsive move. This looks like a retrace. I think we'll probably roll over, have another test of that area, maybe even pushing back to 1.68. So biases to the downside again for next week. However, if we do push on and actually take out this resistance, I'll probably change my bias and actually see a bigger push to the upside. But I think for next week, I'm probably going to see another push to the upside again as retracement, maybe even double top that area and then see the continuation to the downside. But GBCAD does look like it's going to fall to the downside again, and right now it's just having a bit of retracement to the downside. So overall, we're still very bearish here. Again, I'm not saying we're expecting to see a break of this support, but I think we can come back and get a deeper test. As you can see previously, we've been having those tests in that area. So I think a bit more of retracement to the upside. Again, another opportunity to go short and see price roll over back into that support there for next week. Okay, up next we've got GBPJPY. Okay, so next up we've got GBPJPY. So for this pair, again, not too much happened. Price is kind of still trapped underneath this key level of resistance here in the market. I did say if you do hold on to it, we can expect to see a move to the downside, and we did see a bit of that happening last week. Did see nice bearish reaction from this area. However, we're still failing to really push away from this resistance. I do think price is giving us some higher highs here in the market. So higher low, sorry. So as you can see, this is one low, higher low, higher low, higher low. So it does show that price is kind of squeezing between this trend line and that resistance. So if that price action does continue to build up, I do think we'll probably see prices squeeze into this area and actually see a break to the upside, because normally after this pattern, you do expect to see price break to the upside as we get those higher lows and see a break of that resistance. So if that's the case, I think we're going to see a break to the upside and probably a nice impulsive push back into this same resistance around 1.53300, which is our previous swing high in the market. And if that does happen, we'll probably likely to create higher highs after that around 154 on the dot basically. So expecting to see GBPJPY push to the upside. Of course, if you do take out this structure here, so price breaks to the downside, creates a lower low, you might be seeing a bigger push to the downside, and that resistance does win in the end. So again, two possible scenarios. I'm favoring a push to the upside rather than to the downside, but if again we do break for that trend line, quickly change your bias and we could be in for bigger moves to the downside, potentially right back down to these lows over there. But with this structure, expecting to see a push to the upside for GBPJPY as long as that trend line stays intact. probably expect to see a break of that resistance and a push to the upside. So I think the best area to look for setups is either at that trend line on the lower time frames, or maybe a break of this area, a retest, show prices holding that as support, then look for the continuation back to those highs and potentially higher after that. So bias is to the upside for next week for GBPJPY, as long as we stay above this trend line. And up next, we're going to take a look at gold. Okay, so next up, we've taken a look at gold. So for gold this week, we actually flew to the upside. I did say last week that I do expect to see gold fly to the upside. Again, we're trading around this area here in the market. I said we're holding this key area of daily support, and looks like we're getting that bullish structure in the market. So as long as price does hold this 1770 level, I did say look for those buys, because we do expect to see a push to the upside. And I was targeting this 1810 area, which is the previous resistance we had, and we did hold 1770 as support. So as you can see here, held that area of support, a nice push back into that area. So I was favoring a move into there. However, as you can see, we actually flew past that bit because price was very bullish, sorry. And of course, NFP did help push price higher as well. So overall, gold is still very bullish. I think we're getting a bit of a reversal now and could actually see gold push on a lot further. We still do have this trend line here in the market, so connecting these highs here. So again, first test up there, first test up there, second test there. I think we are on our way for a third test of that trend line. So with that in mind, I do think gold is still very much on its way to the upside, and we're likely to see a bit of retracement coming into next week. So again, looking for those buys. Again, we do have this area around here. If I just highlight that area, which again was that 1810 area, which was that daily level of resistance, which is now going to be acting as support. And as you can see, we had a slight retracement before seeing that nice momentum shift to the upside. So if you do pull back into this area, show prices holding that area, rejection, wick rejection, bullish price action, can be looking for those buys, because I do believe gold is still on its way up to go and test that trend line there in the market. So bias is very much to the upside for next week for gold. I think any movement we see to the downside is pretty much just going to be retracement. Even if we do take out that level there, we do have this prior resistance here, which will be turning support. So if we do take out that level, again, really nice level there to be looking for longs as well, and looking for that continuation to the upside. So treating pretty much any movement we see to the downside for gold to be retracement, unless the structure changes. But again, bias is very much to the upside, looking for those continuations for next week for gold. And last but not least, we've got Bitcoin. Okay, so for Bitcoin this week, not too much happened. I think we just build up accumulation before we do see the continuation to the upside. So we do have this key area of support that I was saying, if we do hold, expect to see that continuation to the upside. You can see support there, which gave us the last move back up to 65,000 area. This week we did get a strong close below, but then as you can see, the following day we did see price come straight back above. So a bit of a false breakout there, just to test the support just underneath that area. And you can see if these 2 days there, if I jump to the 4H, retesting that area quite nicely, and now we're seeing the continuation to the upside. So I do believe we're going to see a break of this resistance, which price is currently just testing right now. I do think we'll see a break of that and see a continuation back to these highs eventually for Bitcoin. So bias again for this pair is very much the upside, back to 65,000 mark, and probably a higher high after that as well. So again, if we do hold this area or come back to retest it, I think it's just another valid place to look for buys, anticipating a break to the upside. Or of course, if you want to trade those breakouts, could look for a break, a retest, and then the continuation back to those highs, and probably a higher high after that. So very much biases to the upside. I think we do also have this trend line here as well, connecting those two recent lows. So if you do push back into that support, you got that trend line as well, giving you extra confidence as well in that trade. So yeah, Bitcoin is still very much to the upside. It's back above our key level. As long as we hold that area, I do think we'll back up to 64,000 or 65,000 soon come, and potentially higher highs after that. Okay, so that is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. Again, guys, if you have any questions or agree or disagree with my analysis, just let me know and we'll get a conversation going in the comments down below. But thanks again for watching, guys, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.